Welcome to The Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Hello, and welcome. I am so happy to be here at all. I'm very happy to be here with today's guest. But first, I need to tell you that this show airs every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live call-in shows every first and third Mondays at 1 Eastern. You can watch or listen to the show on the live stream syndicated online. You can find the show on your mobile devices or in your cars by saying, "Alexa, play Dream Vision's 7 radio network." You can get the Dream Vision apps, or you can catch us on podcasting networks that include iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and more. To learn more and to find our full schedule and to see our show archives, please go to dreamvisions7.com. Well, this show, as you very well know, is about sharing stories. And we have a storyteller extraordinaire and book producer extraordinaire, and more things than I can possibly think to say about her. Lonnee Ray is here with us today, and I could not be happier. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I have told Lonnee many things about herself, like her light shines like the bat signal. But Lonnee, you have one of my favorite and brightest smiles ever. You just, everything just lights up when you show up, and it is just so cool. I happen to know, because I've actually read two of your books, one of which is this one, Life Lessons from a Lousy Mother. I happen to know quite a bit about your story, and let me just show you other book. This is not my favorite book, but it is my favorite title. How to Deal with the Dumbass.
What to do and say when they come your way. I left that off the cover.
There you go. And don't we have lives full of them? But given the fact that I've read Life Lessons from a Lousy Mother, and I'm almost halfway through with How to Deal with a Dumbass, I don't want you to share any more of the details about your life than you might be comfortable with. So what I thought I might do, if it's all right with you, and when I first went through the book, and I'm going to show the book again just so everybody can see what an absolute mess I made of it. So I thought, wow, Lonnie's going to be on the show. It would probably be very cool to pull a quote or two out of the book. And then I realized that I was probably going to be inclined to quote everything in the whole book. And then I thought, well, no, that's probably not going to be practical. We only have an hour, so I decided not to do that. But what I would like to do is just read particular things and have you talk about them and see where that conversation goes. So this is where I chose to start. Swallowing negative emotions is like taking poison. We literally turn on ourselves mentally, emotionally, and physically. This manifests as self-hatred, suicidal tendencies, and self-inflicted wounds. I'm quoting you. I'm throwing my hand up on having done all three of these. I have lived to tell about it. Literally. I think I love most of all that literally at the end, because again, having read your books, what I've discovered is that despite everything that you've contended with, and despite the darkness that you've come through, you're living. And there just aren't a whole lot of people who can say it that way. literally. I've also read things about the fact that difficult things we might contend with in childhood literally change the configurations of our brains and the way they're wired, which makes it more challenging for us to overcome them later. And you did it. Well, what would you care to share with us about that?
I've mostly done it. I still have my moments.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So through it all, man's search for meaning is, someday maybe this will all make sense. And interestingly enough, as you'll see, delete the need to understand has turned out to be one of my favorite quotes, and people love that one too. But it came from being intensely analytical and trying so desperately to understand what the heck just happened and the long-reaching effects. How messed up was I? And was it forever? Was it karma? Was it destiny? Was it fate? Was I doomed? All of these things plagued me for most of my life. And I thought, if I could ever get out of the black hole that existed in the middle of my gut for a long time and find some light, I would turn around and come back with a lantern and a laugh and hopefully show people the way out, and that I would have lived to tell about it, literally, because that would be my mission. That I could somehow take all of this nonsense and make sense of it and help in some small way.
So where do you think that determination comes from? And I ask that because there are people who may grow up feeling exactly the same way and somehow never get out, never get beyond it, never change their own states of mind or circumstances. Is it accidental? Is it a gift that some people just have that determination and some don't? I truly don't know.
It might be that I was so desperate to be accepted, so desperate to have value, that, I didn't feel that way at age 8. I overdosed on baby aspirin and banged on my parents' door. I'm scared. And they said, go back to bed, through the door. And so my life was simply a one series of relationships after the other. Like, can somebody love me? Can somebody accept me? Do I have any value? Should I just quit? That entered my mind a lot. And the only way that I found value, as going back to childhood, was being mini mom. When my twin brothers were born, I was 7, and that was the most useful I could become. And so I felt like I had a purpose if I could serve. I became a people pleaser because of the narcissistic bullies I was raised by. However, later in life, a very significant event happened, and I was giving a talk, and I wasn't well yet. But I could talk about informational interviewing. It was literally like a church kind of thing. It wasn't a big deal. But after I gave this talk about how people can, really search inside, make sure you interview for that job, I guess I was inspiring, because a woman came up to me afterwards, looked up at me on stage, and it still gets me. And she said, "You make me believe I could do anything." And I never forgot that. And from that moment, I was like, what else can I do? Who else can I help? If I could ever get my act together, I'd like to help somehow, because it would make sense of all this stuff. So,
wow. So I before you finish that story, I was going to say, if you're someone who is constantly seeking approval, and you're doing that because you don't believe, pick your term, you don't believe you're good enough, you don't believe you're enough in some way at all, I was going to ask you, how do you get over that? But given the story that you just told, did you have trouble accepting that? Did you have trouble accepting the notion that, not only might I be able to do something about myself, but by doing something about myself, I might be able to help others? That seems daunting. What did that feel like?
Well, I'll tell you, Mark, it came from a very strange circumstance in which I ended up with a Tony Robbins cassette tape in my hand. And so that's how long ago it was. And I'd been reading and studying metaphysics and personal growth, paranormal, all sorts of things since I was 21. And all of it was lofty theory and wishful thinking. But that afternoon changed my life. And Tony gave me action steps. He's a doer. And I was like, I don't know who listens to these prayers when we make them or say them. I was just like, please someday, to whoever listens to those prayers, I want to help as many people. No, make it more than Tony Robbins has, and it's like, it's impossible to know that, but that was my depth of gratitude for what somebody brought into my life that helped to genuinely jumpstart action and change in my world. And I wanted to be that person, but it wasn't for me to necessarily take the big stages like, some of my hero, Mark Victor Hansen and others, downtown Les Brown and the usual subjects, as I call them. I got derailed in a lot of ways in life, and that really never came to pass to being that kind of level of speaker. Because I also realized that along the way that who we become speaks volumes. Just walking through the grocery store, it has a vibrational impact, and it says so much, and it changes people without saying a word. And I was like, that's cool. I can live with that. I like that.
Yeah. I don't know how many people think that way. And what I mean is, I'll use your grocery store example. If you're walking through the grocery store and you simply make eye contact with somebody and smile, I don't think people think, whoa, that'll make a huge difference. And if that leads to conversation, then stuff gets really crazy, because you never know what you're going to learn from people. And just from that look and that smile, they might share something with you that you wouldn't have been otherwise inclined to hear.
A lot of people are missing connection, and I'm willing to look at people when I go by them. And I want to make sure every time I walk out the door, Mark, I say to myself, turn your light on, ding, and I pull the chain, and I make sure it's intentional. And I'm not out trying to touch someone. I'm just being.
Which explains why you're not in jail, by the way. But that's a whole other story.
To answer your question, I'd like to back to our, can everybody be that way, or is everybody that way? I remember my best friend back in my early trying to get better days, and she was a sibling of three, and all three of them went through absolutely terrifying, horrible things at the hands of their father, who was a policeman and an abuser. And the two of them ended up being criminals, convicts and criminals. She ended up being a poetry therapist. She figured out something, that term I now use, springboard phrases, poetry. She uses poetry. She would go to kid jails where 10-year-olds had killed their parents, and she was able to, right? And I was so inspired by what Vicki Edmonds was doing. God bless her. And she shows sort of that, you're asking, is everybody that way? No, they're not. I don't know why, because experiences land differently on every sibling. And I think that our souls come in with an agenda. There's some things in our DNA that I've learned from unusual experiences I've had, that we've come in to actually solve, resolve, balance, counterbalance, whatever it is. And I think that's, as a result, those things land differently on each of us. So no, not everybody's here to do good.
Well, I think that's right. And I also think there's something about our ability to recognize whatever that is in our spirit, and our willingness to accept it and do something with it. You when you started talking about Tony Robbins and listening to the tapes, I was thinking about seeking. And what were you seeking? And the question I was going to ask is, did you recognize then that you were deliberately seeking? And if so, did you know what?
I was deliberately trying to get out of pain. Pain's the biggest motivator. There was no way I was going to continue life like that. I couldn't. I've had these furrows in my forehead since I was 14.
Not me. I don't have any at all.
And I'll never forget somebody coming by at a restaurant and kind of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, what's so bad that you're frowning like that? They're going to stay like that." And I was like, "Yeah, you don't know me. If you only knew." I really wish that I'd listened to him because I've had these my whole life, but it's been that stressful of a life. And yeah, so it started early. But the need to get out of pain as a motivator is one thing. The desire to explore, to see, isn't there more than this? There's got to be more than this workaday world, this hamster wheel that they're saying that this is all it's about. And that's what success is, if you can figure that out. And I was just like, it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. And so I started on a spiritual path, and I had interesting things happen to me when I was just a kid that showed me there's angels looking out.
Oh, yeah.
There's something else going on here. I literally heard a voice out loud. And I've had a near-death experience when I was 12. So I shouldn't be here several times over. So there's that.
How old were you when you heard that voice?
So I was 11. And I was looking out over the wing of an airplane, and I love to fly. And I was flying solo from Jersey to Florida and back because I was missing my best friend and we'd moved away. And I don't know where this panic came from. And I was like, oh my God, the plane's going to crash. And I was freaking out. I'm this little kid looking out the window, freaking out. And then I hear, "Don't worry, it's not your time yet." And I was like, what? I looked around like, who said that? And it didn't quite resolve my panic. You know, I was like, "It's not helping. Where are you?" And then the voice said it again. "Don't worry, it's not your time yet." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I hit the buzzer for a stewardess. "Can I have a Coke, please?" And I kicked back and just went on with life. That remarkable experience stayed with me.
I want to jump to something else in the book. Actually, this seems like a really nice segue. And if we can't flesh it out before the break, we'll get to it afterwards. You wrote, "If great life lessons came, it was because of my intention to change only every single thing life was known to be. It was not thanks to a lousy mother. Thanks to a therapist who listened to my stories and validated those feelings, it was finally possible to see the scars and cuts inflicted by the one person who is supposed to love you most.
Yeah.
Mom." He noted my tendency to protect and justify her actions. That's what you do to survive, of course. Call it ignorance, bad memory, or sheer reluctance. The pain was buried pretty deeply. I'd like to add something here that might help. We've all heard the expression, hurt people hurt people. Well, it's also true that rescued people rescue people. That's what you do. How did you get there? I mean, I guess starting from that woman who acknowledged you after that speaking engagement you had, is that what started your awareness of your ability to rescue?
I was trying to rescue people my whole life. And I really was, because I kept, so there's an expression I love called, "When you wear rose-colored glasses, you don't see red flags."
Ouch.
So I was that girl, super gullible. And mind you, I was a pendulum swing of complete opposite reaction to my mother, who was sarcastic, mistrusting. So I became gullible, a pushover. I became all kinds of things in response to what I saw. It's like, whatever she is, I want to be the opposite. And I was really good at it. And so I look for the good in everybody because I wanted it for myself. And that was often to my detriment. And so I would I didn't see it as rescuing. I saw it as, get in the rowboat with me and we'll come up together. We'll row together. And what I found is that I was attracting broken wing birds just like I was. And they weren't rowing. I was doing it all. And the boat was going in circles. But I was like, okay, next passenger, I didn't see it as intentionally rescuing. I thought that that's what you did in life, is you loved unconditionally with all your heart. and you link arms and hold hands and hug each other and try to come up together.
Did it ever dawn on you that you might have been attracting broken people because you were broken?
Yeah. I was one step ahead of them, though. I'm like, I'm messed up, but it's not as bad as you. And that's, that talk that I gave, I was still really messed up, but I had value. All you have to be is one step ahead of somebody to turn back and give them a hand. And I knew that.
Yeah. You
I
know
had
what
to
that
have it
reminds
all
me of?
together.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to make light of this, but it's like the story about the two guys are hunting and a bear comes along. And one guy says, well, we're going to have to make a run for it. And the other guy says, well, how do you know that you can run faster than the bear? The guy says, I don't have to run faster than the bear. I just have to run faster than you. That's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
I think so. I just was seeking to have value. And what I realized later is that nobody wants someone standing over them saying, you could be better,
Oh, no.
And so, in a way, that's kind of what I was doing was let's come up together. But I realized I was really the only one in most of the groups or people that I knew that really cared about personal growth, that was really seeking to be a better person or undo all the knots, the mess. I was not willing to become what I had been raised by.
Yeah.
And not everybody sees that as an option. They just take the cards they're dealt and go, shitty hand.
Yeah. And I'll just say that from my own experience and people in my own life, there are people who respond to unfortunate circumstances, whether it be from their upbringing or whatever, that get angry and either decide to live with the anger or think they don't have any choice but to live with the anger. And all it does is make them more angry and just harden them because there's no way out.
That was me. I was a very angry person. It was a defense mechanism. And I used to wear big clothes so men wouldn't approach me because I didn't want to be wanted just for my figure. And I used to have, I used to adopt a heavy walk. Some people are like, look at that dyke. I got called that a lot back then. I didn't know who else I would be. And I remember having an identity crisis twice where everything I thought that I knew went away. Like literally, I couldn't tell you how to cross the street. It's a weird moment. But I was so angry and I had a right to be. I finally got in touch with that. And the therapist helped me do that. And then it's like, our 50 minutes are up. See you next week. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I'm a bleeding, gaping wound over here. What the hell do I do with all this? And there was no processing of it. There was no instruction on how you process that. My poor housemates, my God, I took it out on anybody around me because I didn't have the words. I didn't have the training. I didn't have the skill. That's why I wrote How to Deal with a Dumbass, because we really need to be able to figure out how to handle that stuff so we don't end up in a tangled mess with people that we really wouldn't have normally entangled with.
Yeah. And then you find yourself there and you're stuck.
Yep.
All right. I think we're going to take our first break right now.
Okay.
And we'll be back in a few minutes and we'll pick it up.
Sounds good.
I thought the break was going to be longer, but that's okay. Here we are. There is a point in the book at which you were or thought you were supposed to write a card to your mother, and you couldn't do it because you couldn't think of anything to put in it. And you said, actually, hold on, that's not what I wanted to share here. Yeah, it is. You said two things. I encourage you to make your own card for your mom. Fill it with all the good or bad things you need to say to her. But then you wrote, listen, you're not required to forgive. When I say acceptance is the key to peace, it simply means to look at the past and accept that it played out like it did. You can't change it. I had a psychiatrist say to me once, listen, Mark, you can't reparent people. And she also said to me, we're sold this idea when we were growing up, and all I could think of was Leave It to Beaver. She didn't cite that. But she said, we're sold this idea when we're growing up that there is something like the perfect family. And we somehow, as children, get conditioned to believe that we're part of one. And if it doesn't feel perfect, we think it's our fault. Did you experience that too?
Yeah, I was I was the convenience scapegoat. I was being yeah, all the time, only all the time. Yeah. I was always supposed to know better magically because I was born first. And yeah, and that's really hard for a kid, when you got parents that have high expectations about things you don't know anything about, but you failed again, you bad kid.
And I'm going to imagine they didn't tell you what they thought you were failing at.
No, it wasn't until it was already done. Or they let it go on. I'm just going to, and I learned that later. Yeah, I've been watching you for a while just to see if you would keep doing that. I'm like, you could have checked it at the door. You could have said something, but there are people who are just incapable of expressing. All they know is knee-jerk reactions. And that's what I was raised by. Two jerks that had knee-jerk reactions. Sorry, not sorry. There were good moments. But when go ahead, you have something to say.
No, I'm just thinking, please go ahead.
So I want to go back to the card, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
When I was little, one of the things that I would get rewarded on was my writing and my cleverness to rhyme. And I would make cards all the time. That's what a little kid with no money in their pocket does.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and it was rewarding, and I didn't feel totally rejected, just a lot. But those times it was like, okay. Anyway, the point is, it was Mother's Day. And I was trying so hard. My mother refused to talk to me about these things. And I was trying to do forgiveness in spite of all the darkness. And I'm like, what the hell? She would never talk to me about it. She'd hang up on me and whatever. And I was trying really hard to do the forgiveness thing, like the good, little new ager or whatever the heck whatever I was then. And I really did struggle. Dear Mom, on Mother's Day, these are all the wonderful things that you've taught me. And I was blank, and it was shocking. I was like, oh, is it me? Maybe not for once. Maybe for once it's not me. Maybe this is actually the truth. And I'm just going to embrace that. I'm going to let that sit there and let that be okay. Because I got tired of being blamed. And when people would say later in life, I'm sure she did the best she could. And I'm like, so does that mean that was my fault then? I don't know. You weren't there, and you don't know what somebody's best is. Nobody does their best all the time. And you do know the difference. And no, she didn't do the best she could. She did what she did. Let's not put them in boxes and say, yeah, it was her best. So what's wrong with you?
I'm going to say that having been through similar circumstances, I may actually be more ready to accept that they did the best they could than you are, but it still doesn't make it right. Maybe they didn't know any better. Maybe their demons were such that they couldn't do any better. I don't know. But I don't know. I guess it's a matter of perspective. I'm
sorry that you went through that.
Well, and I'm sorry you went through that. But the fact of the matter is, somehow, and this was why I was asking you earlier, what do you think it is about? I'm going to say people like us. I feel immodest or something. I don't know. But we know there's something better than that. We know somehow, some way we're better than that. And that's how we're going to choose to live. And we're going to choose to find a way. I didn't find myself till I was in my 40s easily, but we're determined to find a way to be better, to discover ourselves, to find our self-worth and our self-respect, and do something with it.
I want to share something about those people that, and I think it's brilliant. You've been able to find your forgiveness and they did their best. Two experiences. My ex-stepfather, I saw him again when I was in my early 50s. At Thanksgiving dinner, his fourth wife has taken the family photo, and I'm standing next to him, and he reaches over, puts his hand on, grabs my ass, whispers in my ear, "See, I'm still a dirty old man." And this picture is snapped, and his hand is just coming up from grabbing me like that. So no, they don't always do their best, and they do know better. Secondly, my mother in her 70s was mimicking, mocking, and intentionally mean-spirited at me in my 50s still. And at one point confessed that she still held grudges against me as a 9-year-old. I must have done something. Now, this is a woman who did all of her spiritual training. She was a medium. She went to Casadega. It's Psychicville, and she did readings for people. She should have technically been beyond this stuff, but she wasn't and did not want to be. So that's why I said, don't feel obligated to forgive. What you want to do is say, do I want more of this or less of this? And get closer or further away from it. Move your feet accordingly. You don't have to forgive them. Just get away from them. You can deal with your feelings later.
Given all the stuff that you just told us that your mom did, do you think she was doing that to hide from something or to conceal parts of herself that she didn't like?
Oh, I would imagine so. I mean, you have to have it to give it, right? And if she can't love herself, if she's got trauma, or she's got stuff that she didn't handle, she projected a lot of it onto me. She set me up a lot. And I don't know if it's because the person's, bullies and narcissists get off on that. And that just feels good to them. That feels right to them. That's their power. So they have no incentive to change it. I don't know. I would imagine, and I'm sorry that she had a lot of pain. And I remember one time ever, I stood up to her and I slammed my fist on the table and I said, all I want to do is love you, and you won't let me. You won't let me. I'm tired of trying. It's exhausting.
And how did, again, given what you said she had done in all the supposed training, how did she react to that?
Nothing. She didn't say anything. That was a terrible night and a terrible fight. And she just kept snipping at me, everything that I said. It didn't matter. And that was that's why I lost my cool, finally. And I just said, you just won't let me, will you? You just won't.
And that went right over her head, probably, right?
Yeah.
When, and I know you were young, but when you were at the point at which you thought you were going to give making a card for your mother a shot, and you just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Did you recognize in any way that, and God, I hate the word authentic, but did you recognize in any way that you couldn't make yourself be inauthentic or insincere?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because you could have written some baloney in that card and probably gotten away with it.
Yeah, I had done enough of that. I'd done enough stuffing, which creates depression. It's unexpressed emotion. And I had done enough of that in my, decades before that card attempt was done, that there was no way I could be inauthentic. I could not be honest and do that. I can't be. How I feel is on my face. It shows.
Well,
and she knew it,
You've probably noticed that I've never said anything about my being a poker player, because I'm exactly the same way. If I'm thinking something, it's just all over my mug.
Yeah.
We're going to transition maybe right after the next break into something that you wrote in here.
Right.
And it's by way of people helping themselves. And so to get us there, I just want to share this book with you and everyone else who might be watching or listening. It's called Dear Dad by the now late comedian Louis Anderson. And this changed. Thank God I read it when I did. It changed my relationship to my father. So Louis grew up with an alcoholic father who was very, very distant and very abusive. And he passed away before Louis could make peace with him. And he somehow got the idea that what he should do is write letters to his dad. So he literally traveled the country to go back to places where his father had lived, had been born, learned whatever he could, and wrote letters, and didn't know what to do with that. So one day he called a buddy of his and asked the buddy if the buddy would come pick him up. And the buddy came, and Louis got in the car with a box. And the box was full of the letters that he had written to his father.
Wow.
And he asked his buddy to drive him to the cemetery where his dad was buried. And he sat on his dad's grave and read every one of the letters aloud.
Oh my.
And as he read each one, he tore it up and left it there. And then called his buddy to come get him. And that's how he finally achieved his peace. So before we go to the break, I'm just going to share this with you from the book. I have this theory that all we deal with in life is loss. We lose the protective comfort of the womb. We lose our mother's breast. We lose the right to mess in our pants. We lose friends, teachers, relatives. We lose our hair, our teeth, and our youth. We keep losing all these things and never get them back. But we never really learn how to deal with the loss. We never really say that it hurts, really hurts. And so we spend the rest of our lives trying to make up for it, holding on tightly to things that we really should let go of. We're going to pick up from there when we come back. See you in a minute.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality.
Where potentiality meets reality.
Where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brand's distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to DreamVision7Radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 Radio Network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back. Lonnee, this is, again, segueing from the notion of loss and letting go. I won't even explain how, but I got myself all hung up on the notion of agency, our agency, how we can be positive influences for ourselves, for people around us, for the world, etc. And I said to somebody, I found my agency through finding my voice, and I found my voice through writing. So in your book, you said this. I love this phrase: delete the need to understand. What is what shows up. What you make of it is up to you. Becoming aware of what you believe to be true about life is the first big step in rewriting the next chapter. At the top of the piece of paper, write the words, I believe. And then start writing every thought you have about literally every single thing you can think of. Writing makes it real, gets it out of your head, and on paper, you can literally see what no longer serves you. I love that. Outdated beliefs can still run you around. They're buried beneath the surface. It's time to dislodge them, and they're hold on. Once you are aware of them, the game changes. Decide to let these ideas go. They may have been formulated when you were a child. As an adult, they may actually be hindering you. Don't edit these ideas. Keep them to yourself. The topics are unlimited. Just write your thoughts about life line by line. I stopped adding ideas after 2 or 3 months. Reviewing them was like, wow, I had no idea I thought this about that. Yeah. Please tell us about that process and how and why, even if we don't believe we're writers, we should do that.
When it became apparent that belief systems, your belief creates your reaction. It creates it will do a filter. If you go to the store and look for ketchup, believing that the bottle is red and they've changed it to blue, you're not even going to see it. So beliefs can make you blind. And I realized that through some teachings of other people. Thank God for the for the people before us, the motivational types who have also suffered and then come back with a lantern and a pen and written it down. And so it became incredibly obvious that I was being run around with these concepts and ideas that I'd made about life. It wasn't that somebody did a brain dump on me. It was me going, oh, okay. So dad looks miserable as an entrepreneur. Mom looks really miserable as an employee. I don't know which way to go. I believe you have to sell your soul to make money. I painted myself into a freaking corner. I was stuck like Chuck. And I realized I had to sift and sort out some stuff, if only so I could make a living. That was where it started, was survival. Like, everybody's told me the world is your oyster. You're so smart. You can do anything. And I'm like, great. Can you give me some direction? Can you help me out here?
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know what to go on. And no pressure, So yeah, I started writing down idea by line. And that was years, Mark, when people said, you're living in your head. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. All I'm trying to do is analyze the crap out of my past so I can get over it. I want to understand what the hell happened, which is why it's so funny that now it's like, delete the need to understand. What is what shows up, what you make, it's up to you. Because you can't make sense of crazy. You'll never get it. It will never add up. And you'll make yourself crazy trying to understand it. Insane things happen. Okay.
Did you ever come to a realization that you were living in your head because it was the only safe place to live? I mean, I'm asking the question because I would say that was to some degree true of me. And I was living in my head because it was the only place that I could be safe physically. I'll leave it at saying because of the way my dad was. the consequences were too physically painful. So living in my head was safe. Was that true of you to any extent?
Not really. Mine was more about figure out what they're mad at me now for now, so I don't do it again. What the hell was it? And I was constantly thinking, like, how can I not have this happen again? It's partly why I cheated in school. I would write answers on my shoe, on my sneaker. I would cheat just because the one thing I could control, at least even if it was cheating, was a good report card. I could get that, and then I wouldn't have to have no flag. You can't bitch about an A. Shut up. Leave me alone. It was like, but everything else was material. And I had my stepfather was just mean and, throwing things at me, and I'm just a kid, and I'm just like, what the hell? And he's like, yeah, you always were a smart ass. You always did have something to say. And I'm like thinking, you always were a jerk, attacking a kid like that, verbally, physically, a lot of things. I mean, but come on. And so what that did was it made me a thinker. And then I wasn't allowed to express it. I learned how to cry silently, like total body shaking sobs, and I didn't make a sound because that wasn't allowed. And then I'm like, okay, let me dissect this. But later in life, when people said, oh, you're living in your head, I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to analyze the crap out of what happened so it doesn't happen again. And I was like, what does living in your body mean? I don't, you're giving me head and body. And these people would say this to me, and it was like, I still don't understand that. Don't say that to somebody living in their head. They're doing the best they can to survive.
Well,
leave them alone.
Yeah. And I guess I would parallel that by saying, at one point 25 or so years ago, I was experiencing a very severe depression. And people would say to me, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right again. And that would anger me because I would think, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. And nobody else has ever felt like this, which, by the way, couldn't be more wrong that nobody else ever felt like that. Right. I mean, we've been on the planet for how long? And I think I'm the only one who experienced something. That's absurd. So what I want to do is transition to what you do now and how you help people who want to be able to share their stories and even to take them so far as publishing. And I've heard you describe yourself as a book producer. I love that.
Yeah.
So can you share some of that with us?
Sure. The reason I'm pausing is because of what you said. That just registered with me, and the things that we put on to protect ourselves. That's why the I believe list was so important, because of those ideas and concepts that we're living and taking up space. And that's how we do get by. That's people are just trying to get by.
Yeah.
And
I know you've seen some of that Batman stuff back there. But there was a time I would literally think this in the Michael Keaton Batman movie from 1989. He drives into Gotham. He gets out of the Batmobile and he says to this little zooger in his hand, which you can't even see, shields up. And all the shields come up around the Batmobile. That's exactly what I would feel like. Shields up. Don't touch. Don't get to me. It's going to hurt. So you're helping people come out from behind their shields and publish and share their stories.
Find their message. It's really what I do, Mark, is I help people find their message. And that means like they have their story, but what's the message? So like, I don't want to give somebody's story away. I'll just say this. Because of all the things that I've been through, I can see more than they think that they're saying. And,
I get that. Yeah.
So
I completely get that.
So what I do is I pull those threads and I go, oh, what about this piece? And let's make a new tapestry with that. And let's see how we can weave this in a way so that you're able to express your story standing on it versus in it. It's a sort of a publishing term. And that way they can tell their story without dragging other people, into the trauma of it. that Life Lessons Learned from a Lousy Mother was written in 5 days. It was stuff that was kicking around in my head for a while, as you can imagine. And,
Yes, I can.
and one of the biggest compliments was, how to write about pain without it being too painful to read. Because you don't want to traumatize your readers. You want to get them to and through it. Let's get to the other side. And that's what I love to do. So the term book producer comes from having multiple skills, not to toot my own horn, but here we go. Not every writer can do marketing copy or sales copy. They can write a book, maybe. Ghostwriting is another talent. I interview books out of people, or I totally ghostwrite them. Then I produce the art direction for the cover. Obtain all the necessary steps. There's some 78 steps in the process of getting a book done, according to my associate, and then self-publish. And there's a lot of steps involved. And because I'm a marketing minded writer first, and because of my exposure, right, in all kinds of arenas, I look down the road. I'm like, okay, that person's headed down there. I'm going to back it up so that we're engineering their celebrity from here, so that their message matches their mission and then reaches their avatar. Yeah. There's an audience and there's an avatar, two different things.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you please explain the difference between that identity and avatar?
Audience and avatar.
Oh, I'm sorry. Audience and avatar.
Yeah,
Could you please explain that?
Yeah, sure. So with my dumbass book, I love saying that, my dumbass book. It's so much fun, right? It's so much fun. It was originally 89 pictograms because I was writing it for young adults who didn't have anything close to the kind of training that book provides. It's a field guide to potholes and the people who dig them. And I wanted to address the scanners. So pictogram. And I'm no graphic artist. It took me a long time to do that book. And then I published it. And then I found out that the audience, the parents that would buy the book for their teen, didn't understand pictograms. They said, I don't read that way. You are not in this book. There's not one story about you in this book. And it was true. I did all my pithy one-liners. I did all my life lessons in that pictogram style. And so, yes, I wrote for the avatar with pictograms and one-liners, but the audience was different. So you have to consider both when you write a book.
So is the avatar comparable to what I would have called otherwise the persona, your persona?
No, it would be the client.
Okay.
It would be the person you're trying to help the most.
Okay.
That's your avatar. You write to one person. If you're, hey, honey,
right.
Come here, honey. I want to tell you everything that I know. We got a minute. Let me go. And you just, who would you want to dump everything you got onto? What would you say to them and who are they? That's your avatar.
So before we run out of time, I just want to make sure that we get this into. I know that over the weekend, you were conducting, I'm going to call it a workshop, correct me if you need to, that you called Rattled Awake.
Yes.
And what you did was get a group of people together who had things to share from the past 5 years that had, kind of been a slap in the head for them and what they realized for that. And I know that there are some other of those things coming up. And when they do come up, I will share them here and elsewhere. But in the meantime, how can people get a hold of you if somebody decides they would like to work with you? They don't necessarily want to be in one of those, really condensed workshop kind of things. How can they reach you?
I'm easily found on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Quite honestly, that's
just Lonnee Rey, Lonneerey.
Yeah, it's linkedin.com/Lonnee because I'm the only one in there as a Lonnee. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's easy.
And is there a website that you would like to share?
Third Party Insights is my advisory service. That's a fun little read, 10 minutes. It'll get, but that's where I do consulting for people to help them with special projects. So thirdpartyinsights.com or, LinkedIn.
Okay, so sorry, we just covered the whole writing thing. Third Party Insights is for consulting about things like what?
Oh, I help people so wealth of knowledge just sitting here, right? So I do these 15-minute microburst sessions and I'm like speed dial an expert, right? I know marketing, I know sales, I know messaging, I know taglines, domains. I can help somebody advertising specialties. What kind of stuff do we need for the trade show? I have so much background. And so people can literally have me on retainer or even participate in their marketing meetings. That's happened. And it's an unlimited service of whether it's 3 months or a year, that they can literally have somebody to call when they need the help the most. And a lot of times, and I found this out, is you've got a coach and you can't get the answer to your question till next week, and it's really annoying. And I'm that person. I can totally help you, because I found out from other people, plus I'm a confidant. So having somebody on the outside that can see more than you can see for yourself, that's really the value. And I love doing that. People are like, every time I talk to you, I get an idea. Every time there's always an aha, a resource, something. How do you have all that? And I was like, it's a lot of experience. I've been a professional tumbleweed for a long time.
Well, yeah, and there's a lot to be said for just hanging around on the planet for a while, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to encourage people who are tuning into the show to reach out to you for whatever help they want. I'm going to confess, and if folks are interested, you'll find The Anxious Voyage on dreamvision7radio.com. All of my publications are listed there. But what I didn't know is relevant to what Lonnee just said about writing the book, at least from my experience, is absolutely the least of it. Unless you're willing to get behind that thing, market the heck out of it, show your face places, shake hands, meet people, invite yourself into places, you're probably not going to do very well. So, Lonnee, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love you. I'm sure we'll be talking again.
I hope
and
so.
I just want to remind folks that because Labor Day is coming up, next month is going to be a little different. This show will air live the 18th and the 25th. 2 consecutive Mondays, 18th and 25th. And I hope to see you there. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment.